So combat abilities, Missy, if you want to go ahead and do that, and then I'll do the skills.
All right. Combat abilities. The aspiration for combat is for abilities to have corresponding counterplay abilities. The goal is to have special animations for parrying, blocking, and evading. They can be a challenge to implement sort of really reliably, so you might not see them on every evasion or every block, but we do want that kind of stuff to show up. Good. Yeah, I think it would be like very crazy if every single time you were doing something and, you know, moving, blocking, it wouldn't look right.
Right.
Uh, Crowd control. CC and mezzing abilities include root, snare, stun, sleep, and slow.
Who CCs anymore? I'm just messing.
I don't. There will be diminishing returns on stuns, sleep, and slows so as to avoid stun locking. Crowd control won't likely be tab targeted skills. Uh-oh. This is to avoid imbalanced combos with skill shot action targeted abilities. Summoners' summons will be able to use crowd control. Hard CCs are stuns, knockdowns, sleeps, paralysis, some roots, and some silences. Hard CCs may be housed in action-oriented skills because they are skill shots that are more difficult to land.
Yeah, we saw that last
Diminish.
time.
Yeah.
Who was it? Yeah, Mage. Mage had a crap ton of like CCs built into its attacks. You're frozen, and then you're rooted, and then like rank 3 was like because you're frozen, you're rooted, but then when you break out of the ice, then your roots become unbreakable. It's like what? It was annoying.
I can't wait to be a mage and be super annoying.
Right. Too late. Oh,
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
excuse me? Pardon me? You take that back. So diminishing returns in regards to crowd control and conditions like stun and sleep and slows and that kind of thing. Yes, we will have absolutely diminishing returns. I think it's a necessary component to balance out classes that have high quality or high control ability. We're trying to stay away from hard locks as much as we possibly can. We want to have the system be very play, counterplay, counterplay kind of feel.
Yep. Yeah, so here you go. Yeah, ice prison. Here you go. So target enemy, summon an ice prison around them, paralyzing
Cross
them.
mage.
Yep. Rank 2 edge damage, so you get a dot, and then rank 3 snares after root breaks. So it's CC damage, and then you snare them again. Um,
Oh,
javelin, yeah, pulls your target toward your
or
location. Yeah, that's a tank one right there. Or what?
well, that's kind of brutal because first they're imprisoned in ice,
Yep.
then it also puts a dot on them,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're snared and you can't move or do anything
Yep.
after that. Well, that's
No.
yay. That's going to be me.
Exactly. So javelin, this is your tank one. Everything generates threat. I do like so your javelin at rank 3 can pull 5 targets together and stuns them. So that's pretty cool. One thing I love about tanks is just being able to whoop and then just yeah. Dash, of course. Dash with cooldown. I think this was the ranger one, yeah, because jump drops a bear trap at a location the ranger dashed from. So you drop your trap and then you disengage backwards, or jump or whatever. Shield might, of course, increases block chance. Duration of block chance increases the chance of numbers hit. But yeah, this, of course, stuns them, knocks them down. Shield throw, paladin right there. It's stun at first target. The snare here, I think, oh yeah, it was ranger. So holds them in place, adds a bleed, and then snares after root expires. So that's another like ice prison thing right
Yep.
there.
Mm-hmm. It's
Ten-
triple threat.
yeah. Tentacles, I know is mage. Creates an area of effect around the caster that roots the targets. Adds a damage over time to targets, increases the range, and then a rank 3 increases the duration. So you're stuck and you're bleeding. So, yeah.
Like real life.
Yep. And then, of course, trap. Traps stun instead of root. Places. So the root technically means that you're just locked in place, but you're not stunned. So you can technically still cast being rooted.
If you're a caster.
Yeah, if you're a caster or a ranger. Range, yeah. Let's see. Mobility says skills with the greatest power may require the caster to remain stationary while channeling them. Prone and crouch will likely not be in the game. Okay. So you can't even kneel down. Wow. Moving backward will not likely affect block or parry. I think that generally we want to lend to be more mobile in our classes. I think that's is fundamentally old school philosophy to have a lot of stuck in place type skills. This isn't so we won't have skill. This isn't to say we won't have skills that have mobility restriction on them, which we've definitely seen, that will require you to channel or require a casting time where you can't move. But I think it blends between the two. It's neither extreme. It'll be something that you can spec around to. Again, it's going to be a reward thing. We put a lot of thought into what skills are overpowered or have kind of this overpowering nature to them, and those are the kind of skills that we'll generally find that we will be like in place type of skills, where you are now at risk if you're going to cast the spell, but there's a big reward if you manage to get it off. So I get that. That's definitely a pretty cool one. So these Apocalypse ones, that's actually for the game that came out and then is no longer there. So mobility, of course, blinking your target, jumping, rush, of course, and sprint. And then I guess, yeah, player movement. There will likely be a toggled walk and run, auto run capability in the game. This is not going to be any go to waypoint, auto pathing mechanics. Damn. See? No, none of that, Missy. Like BDO. You can't just...
But maybe we won't have to go as far. It looks like you're kind of around your area. So, I mean, it's not moving from one end of the world to the other.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you never know. I mean, they said it's pretty big.
I'm going to be a mage. I can teleport.
No, there's no teleporting either.
What? Yeah, said we have teleport.
You only have teleport if you have a scientific node. And that's if it's high enough.
Well, maybe I have to be a scientist then.
No, you're going to be economics, remember?
Nope.
You're gonna have your
but
little
maybe
stall.
maybe I'll be a scientist.
Ah.
I'm a woman. It is my prerogative to change my mind.
Yep, strong, independent. No, right. So
Got that.
Collision. There are player and spell collision mechanics in Ashes of Creation. Inertia and momentum physics will help prevent blocking doorways access points. This is based on the character's direction and movement speed, and it can be used to push people out of the way. So I guess let's kind of see here. So I know some of this kind of kind of cut off. Kind of go a little bit here. At least you can kind of see what Ashes Creation looks like inside the game. So these are freeholds. These are your actual like housing, player housing right here. So you can kind of see how the player moves. Kind of turn it down a little bit.
It's very rich scenery.
Right. The cape does move around a lot. It almost reminds me of Batman, like Arkham Asylum and stuff.
Batman. But a cape does. A cape should move.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. See, and the movements of these characters, to me, like what they're showing off in game right now looks very stiff compared to these characters. So I'm hoping that's one of the things they're holding to their chest, right? So is like,
I don't think it's too stiff.
well, no. I mean, like this actually moves really well, but the characters that they're showing, like the characters they're showing when they're doing the developer updates. So yeah,
I think they probably move more like this guy.
Yeah. I think these are Elven too. I think these are like Empyrean housing right here. Yeah, look at that, Missy. You can get all decked out with it. Even yours is going to be all a tree.
Be a decked out tree.
Yep. Let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah. So just a little bit of a kind of movement video. And then I guess before we go into dodging, I'll show the little dodging video here. So this is you rolling dodging, so you can kind of see how fluid the character moves. So it's very quick. It almost seems like yeah, so we'll go and do that.
I'm not good at that.
Well, it might just be a little like AA, you know, DD, kind of like how you roll in BDO kind of thing.
Yeah, I always forget. It only ever happens accidentally. I'm like, whoa, hey!
Right. Alright, Missy, go and do dodging and active blocking.
Alright, so dodge rolling type skills is housed in the action skill sets of agile classes such as rogues or fighters. Yes, I love to dodge. Hybrid combat will likely have true evasion skills relating to action-oriented combat and also have iframes, invincibility frames, that apply to tab targeting. Will there be evade frames on dodge? I would say it's a safe bet with regards to how we're approaching the hybrid combat, that not only are we going to have true evasion skills that apply to more action-oriented skills that are coming your way, but you'll also have, you know, iframe type skills that would apply perhaps to a tab targetable skills coming your way. So I think you're going to have a healthy balance both with it when it comes to skills that you can spec into. So active blocking. The Paladin's Might Shield has its own hitbox with hit points. It can actively block projectiles. The developers have not yet decided on whether active blocking will be part of the MMO. They are currently leaning toward using more traditional buff-oriented universal damage mitigation, but are also considering interaction between action-based blocking and a passive block stat from the waterfall stat system. Brad? Are you floating in space?
I am.
I just saw like things going back and forth out of the corner of my eye. And I see the space background. I'm like, okay, he's drifting in space right now. Alrighty then.
That's funny. It's like...
You know how I love that.
Yep.
All right. So the developers have not yet decided whether active blocking will be part of the MMO. So they're going to have action-based blocking, a passive block stat from the waterfall stat system. In Apocalypse, which is gone, when we had the active shield stance, that was an active shield block action-based system. And when we collected design data on essentially the efficacy and essentially the accuracy of players who used that wasn't very high. And there was a concern, at least, on the front of implementing an action-restricted type active shield block as opposed to what would traditionally be along the lines of activating a buff that grants a shield block rate adjustment and is universal on incoming damage and interfaces with the stats is really something that we're leaning towards in incorporating for the hybrid combat system. This is something we're still actively iterating on and actively going to be testing in our hybrid system. But you know, as we're doing that, we are taking into consideration. These are bad sentences. Obviously, we want action-based components to also interact in some way, shape, or form with the waterfall stat system as well. And you know that seems like it might be an oxymoron from an action to tab sense, but it doesn't have to be. There could be components of action. So say, for instance, you could have a dual component where you activate the shield stance, and if you accurately intercept an incoming projectile or a skill that's been initiated from the forward arc, you get 80% damage mitigation or 80% application of the physical defense of the shield. And if it comes from an area outside of that forward arc, then you get a lesser bonus. And that essentially, what would happen is, let's say you take into account the stat of the shield's physical defense value, you applying it as a mitigating factor to the incoming damage. But in addition, you augment that system with the waterfall stat that is responsible for shield damage mitigation or shield rate. And maybe, the default skill says 80% damage mitigation from forward arc, but that gets augmented up to 87% because of your stat, essentially. And if it's not in your forward arc, then it gets, 50% efficacy. Maybe it's 40-something%. So just to give you kind of insight into what goes into kind of determining these skills and how they interact on an action-based front.
Yep.
So yeah, it's not just going to be one thing or another. It's all going to depend. So people, that try to parse every single little bit of damage that their character does, I think is going to be something that's going to be kind of difficult in this game.
Well, when you base, that's like one thing that we were kind of talking about with Chris earlier, just kind of trying to figure out things for Shadowlands, and people trying to figure out, I gotta be this, that those top tier charts, are in like the most ideal situation, period, right? But you're balancing your character power is so dependent upon so many different things happening. Am I moving? Am I not moving? Am I stationary? Am I having to switch to ads? Am I having to switch to the boss? Am I having to move a lot? Am I having to, am I getting attacked? Do I have to stop doing damage? Am I hitting the right button at the right time? Am I, there's so much that goes into it that equals out your actual, DPS number. And until you're actually in that fight doing it, not to say that there are some classes that just are better, like I said, that's balancing, right? But still, in Ashes, what I'm taking from what you just said is, A plus B is not always going to equal C. It's going to be A plus, if B is done in this certain way at this certain time, will equal D. It's almost like A.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes,
Because it's like 50%, or maybe 40, or maybe it's going to be 42. It's not going to be something that you can mathematically map out for your character.
Yeah. So
because it's always going to be a lot of random percentages.
Yeah, and I think action-based combat changes a lot of that, right? Tab targeting, Final Fantasy and all that stuff. You literally go oh, I can cast my rotation. In this game, I almost feel like there's going to be rotations, but then the rotations are gonna. You'll have a basic rotation, but sometimes that basic rotation might not always be the basic rotation, right? Things will change. You'll have to adapt. And I think with action combat, from BDO, is you'll just be your buttons aren't always going to be 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. It might be 1 3 2 5 1 4. Depending on what you're doing, what's available. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the difference and the the non-static
rotations.
So